Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Super English Talks. I'm your host, Sarah, and today I am so excited because we are going to dive into a topic that is not only important for students, but also for anyone who wants to learn more effectively. The title of this episode is Listening Practice for English Learners, Podcast for Effective Study Techniques. And my goal today is to give you not just listening practice in English, but also real practical tips that can help you study better, learn faster, and actually enjoy the process. So grab your notebook, get comfortable, and let's get started. Now, let me ask you this. How many times have you found yourself sitting with your notes, reading the same page over and over again, and then realizing after 10 minutes that you didn't actually absorb anything? I know I've been there, and I think almost every learner has experienced that at some point. We often think that just reading passively or highlighting text is the same as studying, but in reality, it's not. Real learning, the kind that sticks in your memory, requires something more. It requires what we call active engagement. So, what does that mean, active engagement? Well, it means that instead of just looking at the material and hoping it stays in your head, you are actually working with it. You are interacting with the information in different ways. You are asking questions, explaining ideas in your own words, making connections, or even teaching it to someone else. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are trying to learn some new vocabulary in English. If you only read the words and look at their definitions, chances are you will forget them quickly. But if you take the time to make sentences with those words, or maybe record yourself using them in a short story, your brain is much more likely to remember. Why? Because you are actively using the knowledge, not just passively reading it. This is why methods like creating study guides, teaching the material out loud to yourself, or drawing concept maps can be so powerful. When you make a concept map, for instance, you are not only writing words on paper, you are also thinking about how those ideas connect to each other. That process of linking information forces your brain to build stronger pathways, and that's what makes the memory stick. And trust me, this applies not only to language learning, but to any subject you might be studying, whether it's history, science, or math. Now, one really helpful framework that many students find useful is something called the study cycle. Don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. The study cycle has 5 steps: preview, attend, review, study, and check. First, you preview the material before a class or before diving into your textbook. This helps your brain know what's coming. Then you attend the lesson, whether that's a lecture, a video, or even a self-study session. After that, you review the notes as soon as possible to reinforce the ideas while they're still fresh. Then comes dedicated study time, where you really dig deeper. And finally, you check your understanding, which could mean testing yourself with practice questions or teaching the idea to someone else. Each step builds on the previous one, and together they make learning much more efficient. Speaking of efficiency, let's talk about a huge myth that many students believe in: cramming. We've all done it, right? Waiting until the night before the test, staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning, and trying to stuff all the information into our brains at once. It feels like studying, but in truth, it's not very effective. Research has shown again and again that cramming leads to quick forgetting. You might remember some details for the test the next day, but a week later, almost everything is gone. So what's the alternative? It's something called spaced repetition. Instead of trying to learn everything in one long session, you spread your study sessions out over time. For example, instead of studying English vocabulary for 4 hours in one day, you could study for 40 minutes a day over 6 days. Not only is it less stressful, but your brain actually retains the information much better. Think of it like watering a plant. If you pour a giant bucket of water all at once, It just overflows, and the plant doesn't absorb much. But if you water it regularly in smaller amounts, the plant grows strong. Your brain works in the same way.
One of my favorite techniques for spaced repetition is the Lightner system. Maybe you've heard of it before. It's a method that uses flashcards. You organize your flashcards into boxes. If you get a card right, it moves to the next box, which means you review it less often. If you get it wrong, it goes back to the first box, meaning you will see it more frequently. Over time, the words or concepts you know well get spaced out further and further, while the ones you struggle with get more attention. It's like having a personalized trainer for your memory. And the great thing is that there are many apps today, like Anki or Quizlet, that make it super easy to use this system without carrying around hundreds of paper cards. But of course, learning isn't only about memory tricks. Another huge part of successful studying is time management. I want you to think for a moment about how you usually plan your study time. Do you wait until you feel in the mood? Or do you try to sit down for hours at a time, only to feel exhausted halfway through? The truth is, managing your time effectively can make all the difference between feeling overwhelmed and feeling in control. One technique that has become very popular is the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of it? It's simple. You set a timer for 25 minutes and focus completely on one task. Then you take a short 5-minute break. After 4 cycles, you take a longer break, maybe 15 to 30 minutes. It might sound too easy, but it's amazing how much you can accomplish when you break your time into these focused intervals. When I use the Pomodoro technique, I notice that my concentration is stronger because I know there's a break coming soon. It also helps me fight procrastination because starting for just 25 minutes feels less scary than committing to a huge 3-hour session. And for English learners, this is perfect. You could use one Pomodoro for listening practice, another for speaking practice, and another for vocabulary review. By the end of the day, you've covered a lot without feeling burned out. Another thing we often forget about is personalized learning. Not everyone learns in the same way, and that's okay. Some of us are visual learners, meaning we understand better when we see diagrams, charts, or pictures. Others are auditory learners, so listening to podcasts or recordings works best. Some people are kinesthetic learners, which means they learn better by doing, by writing, moving, or practicing hands-on. The key is to find what works for you. For example, if you are a visual learner, try turning your vocabulary lists into colorful mind maps or draw symbols next to each word. If you are an auditory learner, record yourself reading your notes and listen back later. And if you are kinesthetic, use physical flashcards and walk around while you practice. When you tailor your methods to your learning style, studying becomes much more effective and enjoyable. Finally, we can't forget about self-care and well-being. Studying is not just about your brain, it's also about your body. If you're tired, hungry, or stressed, it's much harder to concentrate and remember information. Sleep is especially important. Did you know that when you sleep, your brain is actually organizing and storing the information you learned during the day? So pulling an all-nighter is one of the worst things you can do before a test. Exercise is another big one. Even just a short walk can improve your mood, increase blood flow to your brain, and help you focus better. And don't underestimate the power of breaks. Taking regular breaks gives your brain the rest it needs to stay sharp. So, to summarize this first part of our conversation, effective studying is not about spending endless hours at your desk. It's about studying smart. Engage actively with your material. Use spaced repetition to strengthen memory. Manage your time with techniques like Pomodoro. Personalize your learning methods, and take care of your body and mind. These strategies will not only help you perform better on exams, but will also make the whole learning journey more enjoyable and sustainable.
Now, let's connect this to something fun. Did you know that teaching others can also make you smarter? It might sound surprising, but when you teach, you actually activate different parts of your brain. You have to recall information, organize it, and present it in a clear way. That process strengthens your memory. So, if you have a study buddy, try teaching each other. Or, if you don't, pretend you're teaching a class of imaginary students. I know it sounds a bit funny, but it works. You could even record yourself explaining a topic and then listen back to see if it makes sense. This is especially powerful for English learners because it gives you both speaking practice and deeper understanding. Okay, now let's move to the second big strategy: spaced repetition and retrieval practice. Earlier, I compared learning to watering a plant. Now, let's add another example. Imagine you are building a wall. If you put all the bricks in one day without letting the cement dry, the wall will collapse. But if you place a few bricks each day, letting the cement set, you will eventually have a strong, solid wall. That's exactly how your brain works with knowledge. But spaced repetition is not just about spreading study sessions apart. It also includes retrieval practice, which means actively pulling information out of your memory. For instance, let's say you studied 20 new English words this week. Instead of only rereading them, close your notebook and try to recall them from memory. Ask yourself, what were the words? Can I use them in a sentence? Even if you can't remember all of them, the act of trying is what strengthens your memory. It's like exercising a muscle. Every time you try to recall, your memory muscle gets stronger. Here's a fun activity you can try. Write down some questions on flashcards. For example, one side could say, word for being very tired. The other side says, exhausted. Or one side could say, grammar rule. When do we use much versus many? And the other side has the explanation. Then quiz yourself. If you get it right, great. If you get it wrong, don't feel bad. That mistake is actually helping you learn. Your brain remembers errors strongly, especially if you correct them right away. Another great way to practice retrieval is self-testing. You don't have to wait for a teacher to give you a quiz. Make your own quizzes. For English learners, this could mean writing a list of 10 questions in English and answering them without looking at your notes. For example, write 3 sentences in the present perfect tense, or describe your favorite food using 5 new adjectives. The more you practice pulling information out of your head, the easier it becomes during real situations, like exams or conversations. Now, let's go to the third strategy: time management and planning. Earlier, we talked about the Pomodoro technique, which is fantastic. But I also want to talk about another tool: the weekly study plan. Many students make the mistake of planning only day by day, and then they get surprised when deadlines suddenly appear. A weekly plan gives you the big picture. On Sunday evening, take 10 minutes to look at your week. Ask yourself, what are the 3 most important things I need to study this week? Write them down. Then, break them into smaller steps and schedule them. For example, if you want to review vocabulary for a test, plan to review 20 words on Monday, 20 on Wednesday, and 20 on Friday. When you divide tasks into smaller steps, they feel more manageable and you're more likely to do them. Also, don't forget the importance of prioritization. Not all tasks are equal. Some are urgent, some are important, and some are just nice to do. A good rule is to ask yourself, if I only had 1 hour to study today, what would be the most important thing I should focus on? Do that first. For English learners, this might mean focusing on speaking practice before vocabulary, because speaking is often harder to improve. Or it might mean reviewing grammar before writing an essay, because grammar will affect the quality of the essay. The key is to always put first things first. And here's something that might surprise you: taking breaks is part of time management. Many students think breaks are a waste of time, but they're not. Breaks recharge your brain. Think of your focus like a battery. If you study for hours without rest, the battery dies. But if you pause, even for just 5 minutes, the battery recharges and you can go on longer. During breaks, try to move your body, stretch, walk, or drink water. Avoid scrolling endlessly on social media because that can steal your focus. Instead, do something refreshing that doesn't overload your brain. Now, let's talk about the fourth strategy, personalized learning. This is one of my favorites because it respects the fact that we are all unique. For example, when I was learning French, I realized I learned vocabulary faster when I connected words to songs. So I created playlists of French music and sang along. Maybe for you, English movies or podcasts are more effective. The point is to adapt learning to your style and your life. One way to personalize your learning is to connect new knowledge to your interests. If you love cooking, learn English words related to recipes, ingredients, and kitchen tools. If you enjoy sports, learn words and phrases used in sports commentary. When the material is relevant to your life, it feels less like studying and more like fun. Another way to personalize is to track your progress. Keep a journal of what you learn each day. Write down new words, grammar rules, or even short reflections on what was difficult and what was easy. Over time, you'll see your own growth, and that will motivate you to keep going. Finally, let's revisit the fifth strategy, self care and well being. I want to share a story here. I once knew a student named Maria who studied day and night before her exams. She drank lots of coffee, skipped meals, and slept only 4 hours a night. On the day of the exam, she was so tired she couldn't think clearly, and she ended up performing worse than expected. Another student, Alex, studied regularly but made sure to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, ate healthy food, and exercised. His mind was sharp and calm on the exam day, and he did very well. The lesson? Taking care of yourself is not extra, it's part of learning. Let's talk about sleep for a moment. Scientists say that sleep is like a save button for your brain. During deep sleep, your brain organizes information, cleans out unnecessary details, and strengthens important memories. That's why reviewing your notes before bed can be so powerful. It's like giving your brain the material to process while you sleep. Exercise is another secret weapon. It doesn't have to be intense. Even 20 minutes of walking can increase blood flow to the brain and improve focus. And of course, nutrition plays a role too. Foods rich in omega 3, like fish, or rich in antioxidants, like fruits, can support brain function. Even staying hydrated makes a difference. So remember this, your brain is part of your body. If your body is tired, your brain can't perform at its best. Self care is study care. So, what does that look like in practice? Think about making study guides, teaching the material out loud, or drawing concept maps. All these things force your brain to really work. It's about being creative and deliberate with how we process information, not just highlighting everything. The power of spaced repetition and retrieval practice. One of the most effective ways to study is to move beyond passive learning and into a more deliberate approach. Have you ever heard of the study cycle? It's a framework that breaks down the learning process into 5 steps: previewing, attending class, reviewing, dedicated studying, and checking your understanding. Each step builds on the last, leading to much deeper learning. This is a much better approach than cramming. Research has shown that spaced repetition is far more effective than cramming everything into one session. One study found that students who spaced their study sessions over several days remembered significantly more information. Spacing out your studies gives your brain time to process and absorb the information, making connections and solidifying those memories. It also makes studying feel less overwhelming. Another great technique is the Pomodoro technique. It's a simple but effective way to break down your study time into focused intervals. You set a timer for 25 minutes of focused work, followed by a short 5-minute break. This can really boost your concentration and productivity. Then there's the Lightner system, which uses flashcards and the concept of spaced repetition to move information from short term to long term memory. You start with a box of flashcards, and if you get a card right, it moves to a box you review less frequently. If you get it wrong, it stays in the current box or moves back to a box you review more often. This ensures you're focusing on the information you're struggling with. Digital flashcard apps like Anki and Quizlet make this method super easy.
Self-care and well-being. While all these techniques are valuable, they won't be effective if you don't take care of yourself. Your brain is like a muscle. You need to nourish it and take care of it if you want it to perform at its best. This means making sure you're getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, and getting regular exercise. All of these things can have a huge impact on your cognitive function and your ability to learn. It's also essential to schedule regular breaks into your study sessions. Our brains need downtime to function at their best. Give yourself permission to take breaks, and don't feel guilty about it. When we push ourselves too hard, we're actually less productive. Your study environment also plays a big role. Some people need total silence to focus, while others prefer a little background noise. It's about finding a space where you feel comfortable and focused, whatever works best for you. Don't forget the physical aspects of your study space either. Make sure it's well lit and that your chair is comfortable. Beating procrastination and finding your why. Procrastination is a monster we all face. It often comes down to fear or anxiety about failing or feeling overwhelmed. To combat it, you need to first acknowledge those feelings. Then, break down big, scary tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. It's like the saying, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." Celebrate those small victories, and you'll be amazed at how much more motivated you feel. Another thing that can help with motivation is having a clear understanding of your why. Why are you studying in the first place? What are your goals? When you have a strong sense of purpose, it's much easier to push through moments of procrastination and self-doubt. It's about connecting your studies to something bigger than yourself, to something that truly matters to you. Remember, there's no one right way to study. It's about finding what works best for you. Experiment, try new things, and create a study routine that's effective and enjoyable. Don't get discouraged if something doesn't work for you. Just keep trying until you find what clicks. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into effective study techniques. I hope these insights will help you level up your learning and achieve your goals. What one technique from today's conversation are you going to try first? Let me know in the comments below.